You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
And this is Creep Street. As always, up top, please follow us on Facebook at Creep Street Podcast, also Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We are also on TikTok, which who knows if we're even allowed to use it anymore in the States. I don't know.
I mean, I have to wonder, and I have to ask this to Creep Street, to the Creep Street Nation.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it interesting that so suspiciously shortly after we launched our TikTok,
Yeah.
that all of a sudden it's getting taken down because of the Chinese and the U.S. government's battling it out?
Oh, my God. They are fighting for the Creep Street content.
When I posted a TikTok of our dog drinking water for a long time,
Yep.
they knew to be scared.
Absolutely.
And they said, let's just shut down the whole operation.
Absolutely.
And I don't really think there's any other way around it.
We were already worried if TikTok servers could even handle
Oh my
us
God.
joining TikTok.
Right.
None of this yakking. I want to talk about, I don't know, the birds, the bees, America's first family of serial killers.
For America's first serial killer family.
Oh my God.
Let's get into it.
The Bloody Benders.
That is correct. We are going to get deep and dirty
Yeah.
into the Bloody Benders this episode.
In fact, they're kind of the embodiment of that horror trope of a weird, wacky, like redneck family.
Yes.
That, like, you know, if you get lost and you stumble across crazy redneck family.
Yeah.
That's kind of what this is.
But it's like you don't really have another option, so you're like, okay, I'm sure they're fine. I guess I'm just overreacting.
Yeah. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's really that archetype.
Right. It's like the daughter's hot, but everyone else seems a little off.
A little slow.
Yeah. And I think this must be kind of like where that started. This one is cuckoo.
It is.
Because it's not just, it's so easy in our sick little twisted 2020 minds
Yep.
to be like, oh, a family who committed a couple of murders doesn't shock me.
Child's play.
But no, then you get down into this and what these people were doing. And at the time they were doing it, it's fucked up.
And also, it was more than a couple.
I mean,
Woo!
hello.
These people put in the hours.
Our story mainly begins in the mid-1800s. We're talking the American West.
Good God.
At this time, many people were moving west to claim this land that the government was just giving away.
Right.
They said, you know, if you could come out here to Kansas territory or whatever, and you can farm it, it can be yours.
And let's be honest, they were giving it away after they were taking...
Exactly.
And in fact, if I remember correctly, this particular stretch of land belonged to the Osage Tribe. Right?
Yes.
They got a different reservation, I believe, in Oklahoma. And so they left.
yeah.
And so this was former Osage land.
Right. So that's the thing. It's like in the white settlers' eyes and in the U.S. government's eyes, it's like, oh, there's this free land that's
Right.
just unoccupied, just literally just nature. Nothing is there.
Exactly.
Nothing. Clearly, that's not
Yeah.
what was actually happening. And of course, that will play into
Right.
some ideas and maybe some thoughts of what was going
Exactly.
on at the time as well. But yeah, so this was at this really terrible time in U.S. history.
Yeah.
But that's where we begin in this time. And the Bender family was one of these families that traveled out west in order to start a new life, really, and to get new land and to just, you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And really quick, before we get started, Maureen actually did the bulk of this research almost out of necessity because I was reading this source. There was things popping up in this book about the Bloody Benders that I had not heard of. And I was thinking, wow, I am going to blow the lid off of the Bloody Benders.
For sure.
I'm coming now. People are going to be rocked.
I know you kept popping out of the bedroom and being like, Mo, this is dope.
This is dope. Turns out this book was based
Oh no.
on the story of the Bloody Benders. They took, obviously, real factual things,
Right.
but, you know, like you do in historical dramas, you take real things, but you add in fiction to sort of fill in the blanks
Oh,
and
yeah.
sort of create a more compelling story. And
You just wanted it to be true. We've all
it
been
literally
there,
says
man.
based on the true story of the Bloody Benders. Halfway through this, I'm like, this is like almost too good.
I gotta say,
I was like reading, I was like, this is almost too like,
Yeah.
this happens like too perfectly.
yeah, like
It was
this
like
all
this-
really is tying together.
Yeah.
The metaphor
The
is just-
dialogue is rich and compelling, and it's like, how would they even have known what they said?
I mean,
And
the
then
use of foreshadow is really incredible.
it dawned on me they were taking some liberties, which
Right,
they
there we go.
said they would. So it was totally my fault. So
No, but I gotta say though, this is the thing with technology, okay?
Big.
Is that when you get stuff on Kindle, it's harder to see on your little screen if you're, listening to it on Audible, so you don't really look at the cover
Exactly.
or something, and you're just like, oh, the true story of, it doesn't even say true story because that's not what that said. But if you're like, oh, bloody benders,
Right.
I should listen to this.
Well-
Next thing you know,
it's going to be interesting because as we go through this, Maureen has the actual factual stuff, and I don't know what I have that's factual and what's not. So it's going to be fun, sort
We're
of
gonna
learning as
figure
we
it
go
out, yeah.
what I thought was what I thought was real and what I thought wasn't. So,
but I'm also excited to see what kind of they're like the punched up version of it is.
Exactly.
For this novel you read.
absolutely.
So I'm excited as well. So the Bender family lived in this area. It was the township of Osage, which was in Labette County. This is in Kansas. And the Bender property was right by the Great Osage Trail, which was the only open road that was really available and safe to go west.
right.
So their property was in a good spot because people really had to go in and out of there pretty frequently.
right, and I think it's now, doesn't it lead into, or it became what is now the Santa Fe Trail? I think.
So,
I think
yeah.
that's what they say.
So the Bender family, they got there and they built a cabin, a barn, and a well. So they kind of split their cabin in half just using a wagon cloth so
Right.
that the front half was kind of like a general store, or they would cook food for passerby, people that were coming in and out. And it was kind of like
Right.
a bed and breakfast or like a motel type thing.
Stop in, grab a bite to eat, and then they had, like oats, shit like that,
Mm-hmm.
supplies you might need on the trail. And I think even sometimes if someone needed to crash, you could crash.
They could sleep there.
And they kept like you said, a curtain that divided it. Obviously, the front half was like the store, and then the back half was, like their private living.
like the living quarters.
The
yeah.
living quarters, right.
And so they had some horses in their barn as well, and they had a vegetable garden. So as I said before, like a lot of people were coming in and out through there, so they got a pretty good amount of business.
Right.
But the family was very interesting, a little strange,
Okay.
you might say.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Well, what are we talking
Do you
here?
want to hear about it? Buckle up, Buttercup. So John Bender Sr., okay, he's the dad of the family. He was about 60 years old and he spoke very little English, like pretty much no English at all. And when he tried to speak in English, it was just so low and guttural that no one could even understand him. He was German. So he had this like very,
Right.
very thick German accent that no one could even understand. I mean, this really was the Wild West.
It truly was, yeah.
You know, this was that area where things could just happen and there was kind of just like Wild
Yeah.
West law that they just kind of went on their
Exactly.
own. But anyway, so that's John Bender Sr. And yeah, he was not very well liked.
Yeah. Bit of a Scrooge.
A bit of a Scrooge.
Bit of a Scrooge.
And people, because there was, of course, as you will see, a lot of newspaper articles written about the family. Someone who knew John Bender was quoted as saying, "The old man was a repulsive, hideous brute, without a redeeming trait, dirty, profane, and ill-tempered."
Okay.
So,
Set.
okay.
Real Scrooge.
Upsetting. Next, we got the mama. Okay, we got Elvira Bender. First of all, love the name though.
Yeah.
Elvira. Now, she was 55. She spoke just the tiniest bit more of English possibly than John Sr., but barely. She also spoke pretty much no English at all, and when she tried to speak, it was also like super low and guttural, and yeah, so it like couldn't really understand her either. And people in the neighborhood even called her she-devil.
Whoa.
Okay, they did not like her. They
Okay.
were like, we're not into this. And this is not 100% certain, but it seems like she was actually born as Almira Hillmark in the Adirondacks. And then she actually married a man. She had 12 kids with him. Maybe she killed that guy.
Oh.
Married a man, killed that guy. Maybe did that a few times, like multiple times. Yeah.
The book, granted, like I said, it was historical fiction,
Right.
but they did play into that. They told this backstory about how the mother was sort of this black widow in her day.
Yes.
That she was, when she was young and beautiful, and she'd play the long game. She'd marry a guy and then slowly poison him, so it looked like declining health. Then she'd get, live off that money and then rope some other poor guy in,
Exactly.
That was how the fictional stories. So that was actually a rumor then in real life.
Yeah, and it seems like there definitely is some truth to this.
Okay.
But it seems like she was doing the, the old marry him and, fucking kill him game.
Ooh, okay.
Another woman, or I don't know why I just assumed this was a woman that has said this quote, but it could have been anyone. But this person in another newspaper article was quoted talking about Elvira, and she said, "Old Mrs. Bender was a dirty, old Dutch crone. Her face was a fit picture of the midnight hag that wove the spell murderous ambition about the soul of Macbeth."
Dirty Dutch crone.
I know, dirty Dutch.
That sounds like a really disgusting sex move.
Mm-hmm.
I gave the old dirty Dutch crone.
The old dirty Dutch crone's where you poke both of her eyes out and she asks for more, baby. Yeah, so now we're going to talk about JBJ. We're talking John Bender Jr., okay? He was 25.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, I'm fluent in English. I maybe have like a little like touch of a German accent, but like barely, okay? I'm like, I can talk. But also randomly out of the blue, just bursting out in fits of laughter. And as well as just some other kind of odd or bizarre behavior that made people in the town think that he was possibly mentally ill. I don't know what that was about. One person who knew the Benders described John Bender Jr., and he said, "Young Bender, seen when excited, recalled the grave-robbing hyena at once to mind." So that's not great.
Okay. Yeah, not a good descriptor.
Mm-hmm,
Grave-robbing hyena. That's
so editorializing.
So it's editorializing.
Yeah.
That's a roast.
Reporter? That's roast mode. Roast mode.
That is an 1870s roast.
Yeah.
Grave-robbing hyena.
That is actually pretty dope.
That is pretty dope.
Okay, now let's talk about Kate Bender.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Kate Bender is where a lot of this story kind of revolves around.
Yeah.
Kate Bender, she's 23. She speaks perfect English.
Oh.
The perfect woman.
Oh my God.
23, speaks English. Oh. Also, now this is exciting too. She was also beautiful. People are always, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And she was a self-proclaimed healer and psychic.
Right. And a lot of this story revolves around these claimed abilities.
Right.
And also them good looks.
Oh, that's true.
Apparently a lot of their operation revolved around utilizing those two elements.
Exactly. And I think we've mentioned this in another episode before, but at this time, late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, spiritualism,
Yes.
interests in seances and mediums really, really spiked.
It was real hot.
Real hot at the time.
It was big in Europe. It was big here. It was, especially at this time, 1870, it was post-Civil War.
Exactly.
There was a lot of people were searching and were desperate for answers and for comfort and solace in these times of, rebuilding.
So when she walked around town and she just was like handing out little cards or something, being like, "Hi, I'm, Kate Bender, and I'm German, but you'd never know it.
Right.
And here's my card. I am a spiritualist and I can conduct a seance for you." Everyone in the town was like, "I'm listening." And since she was doing this and it was popular, she actually gained popularity in the community. She was kind of like, known about town. She was like, she's like kind of like fun, I guess.
And I heard that her and John Jr., would they sometimes attend church services?
They would,
And
yes.
that also kind of, they're playing the long game.
Yeah, it seems like John Bender Sr. and Elvira Bender pretty much never left. No one really liked them.
Right.
They didn't really like anyone, and that's that. Kate and John Jr., they were at least like out and doing it. So John Jr., even though people were like a little, not sure what was going on, they were like, okay. And then Kate, people were like, she seems pretty cool, except there was a few things that she was really pushing.
Okay.
That made people say, now hold on.
Okay.
We're listening, but we have some questions.
Okay.
So she often promoted free love which is kind of interesting for the 1870s.
Yeah, about 98 years early.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like, in a way, that's good, of course. But let's just say, though, let me read this quote to you guys that she said. "Shall we confine ourselves to a single love and deny our natures their proper sway? Even though it be a brother's passion for his own sister, I say it should not be smothered."
Okay.
So that's kind of hard to, take.
Okay.
Put a little post-it note on that on your little noggin right now,
boy.
on your little brain.
Okay.
So yeah, she was a little bit different. And she and someone who knew Kate was quoted as saying, "Kate proclaimed herself responsible to no one save herself."
Okay.
So even though Kate was trying to be all like, hey, like, let's just be cool about who we love and be chill, and also like, I'm gonna help you connect with your dead relatives, and she's pretty and young and, speaks English. So you think everyone loves her, but people are not so sure.
Right.
And it seems like it's not just because she fucks her brother. That's just a side dish. So let's now groove on forward to May 1871. A body was found in Drum Creek. This is a creek that is nearby the Bender property. But of course, it's not right by the Bender property. It's not obvious,
Right. I think they want to say it was about the body was found. Was it like a mile from the homestead? I
Yeah.
think? Something like that.
So this body is found, and people are kind of like, this is strange,
Yeah.
but okay. Because keep in mind, this is the wild, wild west.
Right.
Life was really rough. People just like kind of murdered each other sometimes.
Yes.
A lot of hard stuff was going on. For a while, that made sense. But then it seemed like there were so many people going through this Osage Trail and not coming back or not being heard from. And it wasn't always just a single person or something. You know what I mean? It was like, it was happening a lot. And it was actually started happening so much that people started trying to go other ways to get west.
Exactly.
That area was so notorious because they were like, we don't know what's going on out there, but something is really rough. We don't know if it's Native Americans. We don't know if it's frontiersmen out there. We don't know if wild animals. We don't know what's going on.
Witches or, and keep in mind, that was a very big part of people's minds too,
In February 1872, some other men were found, and they were found with the same exact head wounds as each other. And I believe it was the same exact head wound as the man known as Jones that they found in Drum Creek, the one that we talked about before. So now people are like, same cause of death. So
crushed skull / throat.
Yes. So they're like, okay, this does seem to be something.
Like a trademark.
Now, in the winter of 1872, a man named George Newton Longcore and his daughter Marianne, they wanted to move from Independence, Kansas to Iowa. And so they wanted to head on the trail. Their trip was very well planned. They knew when they were supposed to leave, when they were supposed to arrive. And, in that time, you could have a couple of, days here and there in between where something could happen and, it's understandable. But
because there's also other things, wagon wheels break.
Exactly.
Horses get hurt or you get sick.
Exactly. So, a couple days difference is understandable. But a friend of George Newton Longcore, his name was Dr. William Henry York, and he knew that this wasn't like them. They still hadn't arrived. His friend knew this wasn't right. So in the spring of 1872, he actually went out to go look for him. He was a neighbor of George Newton Longcore.
That's right.
And he was like, this is strange that, I haven't seen them. I'm supposed to know, something's not right. So he's going out to look for them. And eventually he made it to Fort Scott. And on the way, he asked every single person he saw and stopped in all of the homesteads to ask if they had seen George and his young daughter, Marianne. So he hadn't found them, and so he started to head back home on March 9th. Unfortunately, Dr. William Henry York was never heard from again. So, but here's the good news, everyone. Listen up, okay? Are you listening? Dr. William Henry York had 2 brothers, okay?
Oh, those York boys.
Those York boys. Boys are back in town. That kind of is what happened, though. Alexander York, he's a state senator, honey, okay? So he was like, you fucked with the wrong guy, okay?
Whoops.
And his other brother is Colonel Ed York, okay, esteemed military man.
Wow.
Okay.
You done pissed your pants.
You sure have. Dr. William Henry York's brothers, they knew about his travel plans and where he was going. And so when he didn't come back, they were like, no, this isn't right. So we're going out. They got a search party of I think 50 men, and they headed on out and they asked literally every single person they saw, and they stopped at literally every single homestead, and they asked if they had seen their brother.
Right.
They were like, have you seen him? Do you have any information? Whatever. So on March 28th, 1873, you know where they finally arrive?
Bender Inn.
Bender Inn, honey. They're like, hey, Benders, have you seen anything? Have you seen a guy that kind of looks like me? LOL. No, have you seen my brother? Seriously, I'm worried he's dead. And they were like, actually, yeah. For some fucked up reason. It's like some people, this is what I kind of surmise, is that they were getting away with it for so long that they got fucking sloppy. And they were just like, LOL, yeah, we're going to admit that we saw him. Just saying you didn't see him. They're just fucking getting off on the fucking thrill. So they're like, yeah, he was actually here, but he, stayed the night, but he left a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And I bet some Native Americans got him. And bye. And they gave an explanation. And for some reason, Ed York was like, okay, I guess that explanation makes sense. I'll stay for dinner.
Right.
So he stays for dinner, which is, kind of weird, but whatever. But then on April 3rd, Colonel Ed York returned with armed men because a woman had approached them and said that she was just at the Bender property and that Elvira had threatened her with a knife. So they were like, okay, we gotta go. Ed York and his dudes, they roll in. They get to the Bender house and they're like, hey guys, this woman says that Elvira just tried to kind of kill someone, or at least threatened to kill someone. But so she was like, sorry, I don't speak English. LOL,
right.
Sorry, I can't understand you. And her kids were like, yeah, seriously, she would never ever do that. That wasn't her. But then Ed York keeps talking about it and asking questions and wondering. And then all of a sudden, Elvira gets super pissed out of nowhere. And she's like, no, that girl was a witch and she was trying to curse my coffee. Okay, that's why I threatened to stab her. Now get out of my house, get out of my house. And she threatened the men and made them leave. But then everyone was like, hold on a second. Not only do you understand English, you can speak it.
Yeah, what'd you do? Buy the fucking Rosetta Stone?
Yeah.
How did you learn English all of a sudden?
Yeah, what the fuck?
Interesting.
So people are like, okay, this shady little bitch.
Interesting. Okay.
But then as they were leaving, Kate Bender, the daughter, she pulls Ed aside and she's like, hey, here, hold on. Come back on Friday, just you, okay? And just come back. I'm gonna use my clairvoyancy to figure out where your brother is. I'm gonna help you. It's gonna be fine. But all the people that were in the search party looking for Dr. William Henry York were like, hi, no, it was the Benders. The Benders were doing it. And they also mentioned this family called the Roaches. I didn't really get a ton of information off of them, and the people were like, no, it's the fucking Benders. Just go for it. But Ed York was like, no, we need evidence. I'm a good man and I trust law and order and the judicial system.
Oh my God.
I guess. I don't know. So he was like, no, we need evidence. He was like, I don't want to hang innocent people. That would suck. But then everyone who lived in the Osage area, you know what they were like? They were like, excuse me, what the fuck is going on? There's some person in our area serial killing. And we don't even have the term serial killing. I don't even know what we're calling it right now.
Right, absolutely.
So they're all worried about it. And so they're like, we gotta have a town fucking meeting about it.
Right.
So all of these people get together. They had a meeting at a schoolhouse. There was 75 people there, which is a lot for the time.
Damn.
And Ed York was there, and John Bender Sr. and John Bender Jr. were there too.
Oh.
They were at this meeting about who is the person committing this murders? How can we figure out who it is? We need to stop this problem, blah, blah, blah. So at the meeting, because everyone was like, this is fucked up. So everyone just agreed. They were like, okay, every homestead from Big Hill Creek to Drum Creek is gonna be searched.
Okay.
We have a search warrant for every single homestead, okay? Right. And Ed was suspicious of the Benders, but he wasn't like suspicious enough to have like people watching them, I guess. I don't really know why or what that is. But 3 days after that meeting where they were like, every homestead is going to be searched, someone was driving their cattle past the Benders and they were like, everything kind of looks abandoned and the animals aren't fed and that's kind of weird. So he reached out to a township trustee and he was like, hey, the weather's bad. Like, I'll get to it when I can. It wasn't like that flippant. He literally couldn't get to it because of the time period.
Right.
But then when he could get there, he was like, hey, I need a search party. Like, who wants to come with me? And like several hundred people were like, fuck yeah, let's figure this shit out. So they go up the cabin, totally empty. Nothing in the Bender cabin, pretty much. They had taken out all of the clothes, the food, everything. But they noticed that there was this horrid odor coming from the floor of the cabin. And it's on the other side of that wagon canvas that kind of separates the room.
Curtain,
That curtain. And they find a trap door. They open the trap door and you go down there and there's another door, like an actual sized door. And it's nailed shut. They get the nails out and it turns out that it's like a 6 foot by 7 foot room. And there is just blood all over the floor.
Oh my God.
The stone slab was smashed with a sledgehammer, but there weren't any bodies down there.
Okay.
So they kind of thought, I guess that smell must be blood sinking into the dirt and everything and causing this horrid smell. But they were like, we still know something's fucked up. This isn't right.
Right.
So they lift the goddamn cabin. They lift it. You understand me? Up, okay? They lifted it. I don't know how they lifted it, but they lifted up the cabin and they looked under there and they were like, there's no bodies under this house. We really thought there were going to be bodies under this house.
Right.
We thought so much there were going to be bodies under this house that we lifted a house.
Jesus. Okay.
But you know what? Never give up. Stick to your guns because if you just keep digging around the house, you'll find something.
Uh-oh.
In fact,
Find something they did?
They did. They actually looked around while they were digging. They were probing. I don't really know what probing is exactly. I think they like put a metal rod into the ground and that helps them see if they can feel anything. It's probably very gruesome, but they were doing that and they saw the vegetable garden. They go there and the first body they found was Dr. York, Dr. William Henry York, buried face down, and his feet were barely covered. They kept digging through much of the night, and they found 9 more graves. They also found a body in the well, and they also found body parts in the well. And the body parts didn't belong to any of the bodies they had found, so it must have been someone else.
Oh.
All but one victim had their head smashed, and their throats cut, and all the bodies were mutilated. But this might be a lot for some people. Fast forward literally 30 seconds in time if you're a little queasy. There was a body of a young girl, and there was no major injuries on her that they could see, so it is thought that she was either strangled or buried alive. And I believe that was the young girl, Mary Ann. She was buried in the same grave as her father, who was the person that was the family that Dr. William Henry York went to go look for.
Right.
So truly terrible.
Horrible.
Okay, we're back. It's still going to be bad, but it's not as bad as what I just said. Okay, and here we go. Around 20 or so people were found.
Oh, man.
So this was a true serial killing family. People were coming by, obviously, because a lot of people were traveling, but at the same time, it's still this like really open land. You don't see your neighbors every day necessarily. You know what I mean? Like they had the time to bury all of these bodies and no one knew so they were able to get away with it for so long.
And I think even their nearest neighbors were like quarter mile away. It's not like,
I mean, at like least I would think.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's not like here where you could literally high five someone out your window.
Yeah. I mean, early on in quarantine, I literally watched my neighbors have brunch on Easter, and it made me feel like I had some sort of control. So that's a tip for you. If you live in a city, just watch a stranger eat. This is how the Benders most likely, of course, we'll never truly know, but this is what it seems like the Benders did to their victims. They would bring someone in and they would sit them at what they would call the like seat of honor or the guest of honor at the head of the
Ooh.
table. And that was so that their back was facing that curtain, that canvas wagon curtain was right behind them.
Right.
So they would sit right there, and then Kate would sit at the table with them and just kind of distract them, just talk to them and just try to engage them in conversation. And while they were doing that, John Bender Sr. or John Bender Jr. would be behind that canvas curtain, and through the light, they could see the outline of where the person's head was.
Right.
And when the time was right, they would take a hammer and they would smash the skull of the person.
I think they said they would try to, it was the right side of the head.
Yes.
So they would swing it kind of how you would swing like a baseball bat, I'm guessing.
Oh,
So it
God,
was
Jesus.
so rather than bringing it from up and down, it sounds like they did a side swipe to the right side of the head.
Right, exactly. Then the victim's throat would be cut by probably one of the women to make sure they were dead. Then the body would be dropped by that trapdoor we talked about before. And then they would bring it in to that room down there, and that's where they would take all the valuables off of the person or anything like that they wanted. So they definitely did do this for some sort of financial gain. Like they did steal a lot, but they didn't only go after rich people. So it wasn't like they did this to a lot of people that they didn't have anything to give.
Right.
This wasn't just a money game for them. And then when they would strip the person of their valuables and everything, they would carry them out and they would bury them on the property. And they also had, I didn't say this before, but they also had an orchard on their property.
Right.
So between the orchard and the vegetable garden, those were two not bad hiding spots.
Right.
Disgusting.
The
but
well is weird too.
the well doesn't make any sense. It's like, why would you want to fuck up your own water supply? We are fairly certain that this is how the game went with them, that this is how they attacked their victims, because we actually have testimonials from a few survivors of the Benders. There was a man named William Pickering, and he said that he was there, and when they told him to sit by the wagon cloth, he refused to sit there because he was like, there's fucking stains all over it.
Oh, Jesus.
So, no, I don't want to sit there. And when he said that, apparently Kate Bender got super pissed and started threatening him with a knife. So he left. He was like, what in the goddamn hell? This doesn't make me want to sit by a stained curtain. I'm going to leave. So he did. He ran away. And then a Catholic priest was there, and he said that when he was there, he saw one of the Bender men concealing a large hammer. And then he was like, I gotta go, and he left. Also, there was these two men that they came to the inn specifically for a reading from Kate Bender to get some sort of, psychic power situation going on. But when they refused to sit at the table next to the cloth again, because they're like, what is on this cloth, this blood? They were like, no, we'd actually just rather eat over at the shop counter. Kate got super, super pissed again. And then she was yelling at them. And then the two Bendermen came out from behind the cloth, and then they left because they were like, no, this is frightening. Well, I have a little bit of a theory that I wonder if maybe their killing was maybe in some way ritualistic. And I mean ritualistic in a couple ways. I mean, maybe it was literally ritualistic where they were performing a ritual, or maybe it was in a way where they kind of had a compulsion to commit the murders in the same way. Maybe it wasn't just because they knew it was efficient. Maybe they felt like they literally had to do it that way.
Right.
It's just, that's kind of a theory that we'll kind of come back to in a second. So in the house, there were more than a dozen bullet holes in the roof and the side of the cabin. So this made people think that people were fighting back. Those were maybe from people who did get out and survived, or maybe people who struggled a bit before they were killed. Later, 3 hammers were recovered from the Bender house, because pretty much everything was gone, but I guess they found a couple things. And those hammers matched the wounds on the victims' bodies. Wow. So that was another nail in the coffin for them. You can actually still see those hammers and one of their knives that still has blood on them.
Right.
And I think it's the Cherryvale Museum in Kansas, I think. So that's kind of cool. If you're going through Kansas and you want to see a murder weapon from the Bloody Benders, you can.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of, like spooky, but like fun, I guess. Now, there was another thing that was found on the Bender property.
I'm intrigued.
There was a Catholic prayer book found. And in this prayer book, there were some notes written inside.
Okay.
One note said,
Johanna Bender, born July 30, 1848.
Another one said,
John Gebhardt came to America on July 1st, 18 ? Big Slaughter Day, January 8th, and hell departed.
So spooky.
Interesting. And where was this again?
This was written in a Catholic prayer book that was found at the Bender property. So this is what made me think maybe there was some kind of a ritual to what they were doing. I know the notes are pretty cryptic. There's not too much going on.
Right.
But it does make you think, okay, these are different. They're similar names, but not quite the same.
Right.
We're talking about, and then the big slaughter day, and then hell departed. You're like, maybe they think they're sending souls to hell for God or
That's
something.
interesting.
You know what I mean? Like, I wonder what their reasoning is.
Right.
But once it was clear that the Benders were gone, some sort of justice needed to be done, or at least tried to be done. And so there was a man named Brockman, and he was a friend of the Benders, apparently. And people thought that he had information on where the Benders were, where they were. He was like, hey, I don't know anything. I don't know where they are. So they took him into a barn. They hung him until he was unconscious. They took him down. They revived him, and then they roughly interrogated him, asking him, saying, you know something, we know you know something. Hung him again, revived him, interrogated him. They did this a total of 3 times.
Absolutely insane.
He experienced death, essentially, 3 times.
He did live, right? Didn't they send him off
yeah.
on his way, just like stumbling into the
prairie? Yeah, they just let him off. They said, what? They were like, well, we tried. I guess he's not going to say anything. And someone was quoted as saying, he staggered home as if he were drunk or deranged. Dude, he's not drunk. He just got fucking strangled to death 3 times in Kansas.
Can you imagine just like walking up like, hey guys, why are we all here at the farm? What's going on?
Don't you guys miss the Benders?
Hey Steve, how you doing?
Now, I don't understand exactly how detectives figured this out, especially at the time, but they did. Or I guess this is what we say. This is what we know as a society right now about the Benders. They followed the wagon tracks, and then they found their wagon abandoned like 12 miles away from their house. They were like, damn, okay. They knew they couldn't keep going like this.
Right.
So they abandoned their wagon. All 4 of them got on a train. But then John Jr. and Kate, they left, and they got on a train that went towards Texas.
Yeah, I think Denison, Texas.
Yeah. Whereas John Sr. and Elvira, they took another train, took another route kind of more towards St. Louis. And I haven't really mentioned this before now because, I don't know, I just wanted a little bit of a mystery. I wanted I wanted to keep it spicy for you guys.
Right.
It is thought that maybe John Jr. and Kate were actually not brother and sister. It's thought that they might have actually been husband and wife. I think that is pretty close to at least what it could be, because John Bender Jr. and Kate may have actually been husband and wife, or they might have been common law married, which basically means even though you're not technically married, if you've been living together in some way for a certain amount of years, you get the benefits of being married, essentially. But it's very possible, and many people think that John Bender Sr. was not married to Elvira, and that Elvira, that none of them are related. It is widely thought that Elvira and Kate are related. They are mother and daughter, but even they might not be.
Yeah. And they were never caught. But I mean, there are theories that, because who knows, they could have been caught and killed.
Well, that's kind of what a lot of people have wondered, because many people, it's kind of thought that when John Jr. and Kate, when they got to Texas, they went to this like outlaw county between Texas and New Mexico, or what would be Texas and New Mexico. And they couldn't be tracked down there because it was so rough and dangerous down there.
Right.
And many people have said that John Jr. died of a stroke but we don't know if that's true. One group of travelers said that they caught the Benders, the whole family, and that they hanged them and that they dumped them in a river. And a different group of travelers said that they had a shootout with the Benders and they caught them and they just buried them somewhere in the prairie. However, the reward for the Benders, I've seen it reported $2,000 or $3,000. That anyway, whatever it is, it's equivalent to somewhere between like $55,000 to $65,000.
Wow.
It was never claimed. No one ever came forward. So who knows what that's about. But in 1884, an elderly man who looked a lot like John Bender Sr. committed a murder in Montana right by Salmon, Idaho. The victim of this crime was killed by a blow to the head.
Interesting.
So they were like, okay, we need to send, like, I don't know exactly what the terminology is, what they used back then,
Some
but like
sort of an
send
investigator.
like a confirmation that this is who this is. So they had to send a letter or they had to send word to Cherryvale, Kansas, and then someone would have to come from Cherryvale,
Wow.
Kansas to Montana to see if it really was him.
Right.
Very different time.
Oh,
Jesus.
yeah.
What
Wow.
a fucking nightmare. So while this was happening, though, the person they had in custody for this crime tried to saw off his own foot to escape, and he bled out and he died. So by the time the person from Kansas came to identify this person, the body was too decomposed to identify. So was that man actually John Bender and he deeply didn't want to be caught for the Bender murders?
Interesting.
Or was this just a coincidence because it was a man that
Wow.
just really didn't want to get caught and he just happened to look like John Bender? But another point that I think we're all going to be very into is that on Halloween, we're talking October 31st,
Oh.
a spooky day. Halloween, a little different time though, 1889. Okay. Possibly Elvira and Kate Bender are arrested in Niles, Michigan for theft. And they were like, no, it wasn't us. And they were like, okay. And then they were arrested again for theft. And they were like, hold on, you guys are the bloody Benders. Like, you're Elvira and Kate Bender, we know it. And they were like, no, we're not. And they kept pushing him and pushing him. And both of them sold the other one out. Both of them
Really?
said, no, that actually is Elvira, but I'm not Kate. I was just an innocent bystander.
Right.
Or the other one say, that actually is Kate, but I'm not Elvira. I was just an innocent
Oh.
bystander. You know what I mean? So they were doing that. And basically, because of lack of evidence, they were released because they both had people write in letters saying like, no, this isn't Kate Bender. No, that's not Elvira. That's my mom.
Interesting.
And they were released. And to this day, we really don't know for sure where they are, what happened to them. Were they really family? Were John Jr. and Kate married and they were having sex, and maybe that's why Kate was like, hey guys, it's fine if people want to fuck their sisters. It's fine if you see me and John having sex. It's totally fine. Don't worry about it. When really she's like, we just want to have a plan in motion in case they see us, canoodling because we're, not related and married.
Absolutely.
Or maybe she actually was like, no, I have a sexual relationship with my brother and I want the community to know.
Interesting.
All
right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for the Bloody Benders. Maureen, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so fun. I loved this one.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dylan Hackworth,
My name is Maureen Bogey.
and this is Creep Street. Citizens of the Milky Way, good night and goodbye.